on this oil tanker...
It's been a long year, hasn't it, Sheila?
It's been a long year already,
It's been a long old year.
Interesting to hear John Bolton there describing what these vessels actually are, these ghost ships, as he called them. But almost whatever they are, this is, to use very old-fashioned language, this is a right to do, isn't it?
It's a right to do. Is that a diplomatic term?
I think it is,
They should use that at the UN.
This is a right to do.
A right to do. Look, I think in a way it's an extension of what we're seeing overall, right? Or the instability that Trump's actions and the way that Trump acts on the international stage, that it sort of percolates through the system, right? Because I think what's going to happen, I suspect that John Bolton is right when he says that, if we're expecting some enormous conflagration, that hopefully that won't take place. But it is certainly a symptom of an international system which is destabilising, right? Because I suspect what the Americans will say is, no, this is a Venezuelan ship, really, sailing...
Sanctioned by us.
Yes, indeed. Sailing under Russian colours, that is an illegitimate act. We've basically seized control of the Venezuelan oil industry. Therefore, really, Venezuelan shipping is our affair. And despite the fact that, a long-standing principle and norm of international law is that if a ship is flying under the colours of a particular ship, then it's basically under the defensive umbrella of that particular country, in this case, Russia. That is being broken and that is being tested, but that is the story, isn't it, Sheila, of the Donald Trump presidency day after day after day. He strains and puts pressure on all of these norms and institutions that we've known and that the globe operates under.
And we've also had Russia, long before the Venezuela events at the weekend, we've had Russia sort of testing the waters, literally and metaphorically, haven't we?
Indeed. We don't know much information. The Trump administration may well have a point in terms of what the ship and what the Russians have been doing. But look, I think that, this comes under the sort of extraordinary kind of act, right, which is that we sort of saw yesterday when we saw J.D. Vance tweeting out something that Trump had put on Truth Social, right, which is this, where he basically says, that is Trump, I'm pleased to announce that the interim authorities in Venezuela will be turning over between 30 and 50 million barrels of high quality, it would be, wouldn't it, sanctioned oil to the USA. This oil will be sold at its market price, and that money will be controlled by me as President of the United States of America to ensure that it is used to benefit the peoples of Venezuela and the United States. This is amazing stuff. It's extraordinary stuff. It's basically the United States acting as an international pirate, going into a country, having a coup d'etat, and then saying, right, straight away we're seizing all of this bounty, this booty, and we're going to basically sell it to enrich ourselves and maybe a bit of Venezuela. But that is so unorthodox. And so this is sort of part of that unorthodoxness.
Unorthodoxity. Yeah. That's clearly unorthodox, but it will be fascinating to see the degree to which any Venezuelans benefit from it.
Well, indeed. I mean, not least
they might,
but I mean, most analysts would say that it's going to take 10 years or so to really get the Venezuelan oil industry off the ground again, if the Americans, and that could involve all sorts of stuff. I mean, does that involve American contractors going in? Presumably it does. Does that mean American soldiers will be sent in to protect those contractors and those installations? Probably does. So that's basically transforming Venezuela into a quasi-colony of the United States, and that is a very different place that within the United States has been in any time recently.
And let's talk about Greenland as well. In fact, before we get to Greenland, let's talk about Ukraine, because it was interesting to hear the Prime Minister in PMQs essentially linking the two, because the announcement on Ukraine, the boots on the ground plan, he said very plainly, didn't he? Only possible if we've still got NATO, really.
Indeed. And I think what you can see playing out with Starmer and other European leaders is precisely that last point that you left it with John Bolton on, which is, can you swallow enough of your pride and go along with enough, very often, kind of madness that you can keep Trump and the US in the international order just enough to see out the Trump 3 years. Now, I'm not as sanguine as John Bolton is that after 3 years, the United States is going to elect a quote-unquote normal president, because I think Trump's impact on politics, particularly in the Republican Party, obviously, is so profound that it's not clear that you just sort of end Trump, snap your fingers, and then you go back to a quote-unquote
sort of
normal...
patrician Republican.
Yeah, or even like of the George W. Bush school. I just don't quite see the Republican Party in that place. But anyway, that's clearly the calculation that is being made. But the problem is, Sheila, isn't it, is that, in the meantime, what kind of reality are we actually living in, political reality? So to take what Keir Starmer was saying there, I mean, I think that, Kemi Badenoch had Starmer on the ropes at Prime Minister's questions for good reason, which is basically that it is clear that despite the huge personal investment that Starmer has made with Trump personally, that neither he nor any other European leaders are wielding much influence over the White House about very much at the moment. There are huge questions over this Ukraine commitment that the Prime Minister has said that he would make. I mean, he's talking about deploying British troops along the Ukrainian border to police any ceasefire. So many questions about that. Why would the Russians accept that when you consider that, for as far as Vladimir Putin is concerned, he's not just fighting this war for territory, he's fighting it because he wants to address what are, in his views, quote-unquote, the root causes of the war, i.e. what he sees as
the NATO-ification of Ukraine.
NATO encroachment into Eastern Europe and Ukraine. What he wants to do is permanently neuter and bring back into the Russian sphere of influence the Ukrainian government. Why, therefore, would he accept, when he believes that he is winning this war, European, British, French, whatever troops on the border? And then just a matter of practicality. So one study which suggested you'd probably need minimum 150,000 European troops, in addition to what the Ukrainians have, to police any ceasefire agreement along the Ukrainian border. Current size of the British army is about 70,000 men. Where are these troops going to come from, and how much money is it going to cost? Which brings us to the third bit of unreality, as it seems to me, which is, again, Badenoch was pressing the Prime Minister on, which is we are committed to get to 3% of GDP onto military spending, I think, by 2034. Given the current geopolitical instability that exists, what, is that really a credible timetable? All of that said, what was Kemi Badenoch's answer? Kemi Badenoch's answer is, we need to have a NATO meeting. Why would a NATO meeting solve anything when you consider that the problem that we're facing right now is the principal, largest, biggest member of the NATO alliance, the United States,
is threatening
going rogue? There is no answer. Starmer doesn't have an answer to the US going rogue. Kemi Badenoch doesn't have an answer to it. No European leader has an answer to it because there is no answer. Because the US going rogue basically upends the fundamental pillar upon which our security has rested since 1945. There is no answer. No one has one.
And the most, apart from Greenland, obviously the most obvious country in the crosshairs of that, in very, very real terms, life and death terms, is Ukraine, isn't it?
Indeed so. And I can see why Macron and Starmer and so on are trying to play their cards as carefully as possible with Trump, because they desperately want those security guarantees. But again, Sheila, talking about living in a different reality. Let's say Trump turned around tomorrow and said, all right, I'll give you those security guarantees. Does anyone really believe, or can they be 100% sure that Trump will actually adhere to them? I don't think we would. I don't think Vladimir Putin would. And there's been a lot of talk, it seems to me, over the last week or so, as if Trump invades Greenland, is NATO finished? It feels to me, at the moment, like it's already finished, at least temporarily, because does anyone seriously believe right now, or can anyone, all NATO is, Sheila, right? All NATO is it's a confidence trick. It's been a confidence trick since the 1940s, which is to say, the trick is, to the Soviets then and the Russians now, if you come for one of us, you better be really careful, because we're going to come for you. Yeah. Does anyone really believe right now, or can be 100% confident that that's correct because of Donald Trump? I'm certainly not, and I don't think anyone would be.
Well, I think Keir Starmer made it clear in the comments today that he wasn't either. Yeah. He didn't put it quite that explicitly for pretty obvious reasons, but I think he is. Thank you, Lewis. Lewis Goodall, host of the Newsagents podcast, which drops at 5 o'clock usual time today.